Thank you. I'm told we turn into pumpkins in 5 minutes. So what I'd like to do, and I have to apologize to my colleagues for flashing the hurry up signs at them, but I did want to make sure we have time for conversation with you. So if you have questions, please raise your hand. There are folks with microphones. Identify yourself and to whom you're asking your question. This gentleman here in the middle, please. The microphone's on its way. No, Shell, let me get you next. I was actually pointing to this gentleman. Thanks. I don't think it's on.
I can hear you.
It's on?
There you
Good.
go.
Okay. I'm Bryce Wakefield. I'm an associate with the Asia program at the Wilson Center. My question's to Dan Sneider. I note that in the DPJ manifesto, there's a proposition to, what is the wording? They're going to propose a revision to the Status of Forces Agreement. And I was wondering if you can comment on something that Katharine Moon said, the relationship between local government actors in Japan on this issue and national government actors. How do base issues interact on that level? And also, I was wondering, in that light, could you comment on what your prognostications might be for August or September this year when the DPJ has said that it would move forward on the construction of Henoko? Thanks.
Well, the revision of the SOFA, that's been a part of the DPJ's party manifesto since 1996, and that refers mostly to jurisdictional issues like, in what court system, how you deal with crimes committed by servicemen. Americans have insisted long that the actual SOFA agreement with Japan is actually pretty good from that point of view, better than others, but that's been a longstanding DPJ issue. And it's an issue in base communities as well. I think that we saw during this last 9 months how much local government can drive these issues. The DPJ, Hatayama, tried desperately to get anyone in Japan to accept the relocation of the helicopter base outside of Okinawa, and he got nowhere. And in fact, he even made an appeal at the end to the Governors Association, where he was pretty roundly repudiated. I think only the governor of Osaka responded positively. So, and actually, ironically, part of the DPJ's platform is to devolve power from the center to local government. That's one of their major platform items for a long time. So they're reaping what they sow, I guess, to some degree. But I think in Okinawa you see very much that local government is a powerful actor. And that's why we're going to have a problem with these negotiations as they go forward. That the hope is that the U.S. hope, and I think the hope of some people in the Japanese government, is that they can bribe sufficiently Okinawans. It's an old tactic that's been used many times before with various economic development packages and so on and so forth to shift Okinawan opinion somewhat. But they have they have city assembly elections. That's the level on which this thing is going to be dealt with in Nago, which is where the base is supposed to be relocated in September. The hope is that somehow or other, there's 26 members of that assembly. About 5 or 6 of them are basically representatives of the construction companies who want to go ahead with the base because that's jobs and money. They want to try and win a few more votes and hopefully win a majority of the assembly, and then they have an Okinawa governor's election in November, and that's the really big one. And a very important statement that Mr. Khan made, which I didn't get picked up anywhere here, but was very important, was that he said about 3 days ago that he would not institute what's called a special measures law. That is, that the governors, Japanese governors, have the power to approve any project offshore. It has to have governor's approval. Special measures law would technically be overturning the governor's authority to do that, overturning that decision, and Khan said he would not do that, which some people in the U.S. suggested he ought to do. He said, no way, I'm not going to do that. So that tells you that Okinawan opinion is going to drive this thing heavily still. And the real danger is that the current governor, who's a little more sympathetic potentially to signing off on this, he's an LDP member, although he currently opposes it, will not get reelected. And the we will see the election of someone much more anti-base and radical, for instance, the mayor of Ginawan, Mayor Iha, who would drive Americans into sheer madness. But if he became governor. But this is going to be the problem in the months ahead, and that's why I said the government wants to, I think, sincerely wants to try and put this issue aside. I think both governments want to put this issue in a box, move it aside, so that it doesn't become the central preoccupation of our relationship. But it's going to be very difficult to do that because Okinawan politics isn't going to allow it, and the DPJ is not going to overturn Okinawan politics in a way that's going to cause them major political problems otherwise. I mean, I think that's just the reality. So they're going to have to figure out a way to manage this, and it's going to be very, very difficult to do.
Thanks, Dan. I had promised Shell. It's unfortunately, it has to be the last question. We just run out of time. I apologize.
Well, very briefly, my compliments to all the panelists. Really a fine, fine series of presentations. My question is to Anne-Marie, not surprisingly. In addition to saying what a superb tour d'horizon you gave of Indonesian politics, I wonder if you can comment on an impression I had. I was recently in Indonesia talking with people in both the think tanks and the government. And my impression about the impact of democracy that you so well articulate is that it's having a foreign policy impact vis-a-vis ASEAN. Indonesia's been the driver behind the ASEAN Charter going back to 2003, and yet Indonesian elites seem very disillusioned with what's happened to the Charter and with ASEAN in general. And in my discussions in the foreign ministry and also in some of the think tanks, I had the impression that Indonesia is cooling on ASEAN in general, which is rather frightening given the fact that it's the key member of ASEAN and always has been. And they're looking more toward a global community now. They talk a lot about the G20. Can you give us your reactions to that?
That's exactly correct. Indonesia now is a member of the G20. Hillary Clinton is calling Indonesia one of the emerging powers that the U.S. is looking to help the U.S. partner with in global governance. But let's remember that it was only, a decade ago after East Timor, where Indonesia was a real international pariah. So you've had this dramatic shift from being this object of international condemnation over East Timor to now being feted by world powers. And as Indonesia likes that. It likes playing on the global stage. And it didn't have this opportunity before. So this is something new, and they want to do it, and they want to do it in a responsible way, which I think is consistent with U.S. interests. Their frustration with ASEAN is that ASEAN's consensus decision-making rule means that, Laos and Cambodia have a veto over where the organization goes. And Indonesia's been extremely frustrated that they've not been able to get ASEAN to move on a whole host of issues. And yes, Indonesia is the leader of ASEAN, but ASEAN has been unable to play a role in resolving some of the democratic issues in those countries. Indonesia feels like it's often one of 10 in the organization pushing for some of these issues, and I think it's getting tired. Indonesia is also well aware that there's a strong link between its role in ASEAN and its global role, that part of what makes Indonesia an attractive partner at the global level is its presumed ability to play a leadership role locally. So they know they can't give it up, but there is, as you note, a very strong disillusionment with the inability to enact policies that Indonesia wants to see done.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Again, apologies to all of you for having to end it at this point, but we have come to the witching hour, and Bob Hathaway has some administrative announcements for us, and then we'll turn it over.
Thanks, Dick. Thanks to all of our panelists for really splendid presentations. We had some discussion yesterday about the need for the academic and scholarly community to talk more directly to Washington policymakers. I cannot think of a more important message to tell the decision makers in this town than not only do we have domestic politics here, our international partners around the world have them. I find it great irony that we're so consumed with our own domestic politics here as they impact foreign policy. Witness 3 canceled trips to Indonesia in the last 12 months. Witness the problems we're having with the Chorus FTA. And yet we're so frequently oblivious to the role that domestic politics play overseas. So kudos to our panel today. We're now going to take a brief break. Coffee and tea, of course, out there. I would urge you, however, to move rather quickly down to our breakout session rooms just down the hall. We're going to start those sessions promptly at 10 because we only have an hour for those sessions, and we want to be back here. We'll be meeting here in this room again at 11:15. So if you will join me in a round of applause for all our panelists, and see you in 10 minutes down the hall.